And now I do want to introduce our academic partners today. So today I have Martin Smith, Katie Altoff, and also a student speaker, Taylor Miller. In the chat, we also have Maxine Semple, who is part of our international department. So if you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A as well. But without further ado.
Okay, well, should I take it from there, Mavis?
Yeah, all you,
Okay.
Martin.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Martin Smith, and I'm going to be talking about ecosystem restoration, not to be confused with environmental management assessment, which we described by Katie Altoff, the coordinator of that program. So both our programs are 8-month-long programs. For an example of ecosystem restoration, we start in September and go until April. But environmental management assessment has both September and January starts. So there's twice as many options to join what we are going to call the EMA program, the Environmental Management and Assessment Program. We're both heavily focused on building hands-on practical skills with our students. Many of you are coming from a university background where you've sat in lecture halls a lot and you haven't done much. And we are going to reverse that trend and make you get out in the field, make you get in the lab and work in smaller groups and small class sizes to get some of those practical skills. Both our programs, we have got client-based projects or in internships in the case of EMA. We're doing real work in contact with actual people in industry. And we're both programs heavily help our students find jobs following their graduation. We are quite good at that, particularly good at that compared to university setting. But we've got different focuses, the EMA program and the ER program. And I think the next slide might help us with that. Let's start with ecosystem restoration. It's the more field-oriented program. Lots of field work, some office work or some report writing, some more desktop work, but we try and get you out in the field as much as possible. And we try and take a deeper dive into application specifics. For instance, Taylor has been going to be working on an ecological land classification potentially in her next job. And that's a lot of field training going on there. We also have what's called a year-long project. That's what's within the college, but you are working with specific people in industry in a small group of 2 or 3 people. Meanwhile, in the environmental assessment program, you're working on gathering a lot of information from many sources, including some field work and lab work, but overall it is more office. EMA covers a much wider range of topics in ecosystem restoration. They go from waste management to sustainability, to laws and regs, to managing projects, a much broader range. Another distinguishing feature of ecosystem restoration versus environmental management assessment, EMA has an internship. And I believe Katie will expand on that. I believe that's Friday's second term. For instance, 1 day a week, second terms. So let's talk about ecosystem restoration specifically. Yes, this is our spring 2021. So like I've talked about already, we want you to develop these particular practitioner skills, such as OBBN, looking at being able to use the Ontario benthics bionetworking system to come up with what invertebrates are in stream systems. We want you to work on techniques such as ecological land classification. One thing we've found over the years is that students are looking for certifications and accreditations in their resumes to make themselves more employable. They're coming out of university with, 40 courses or 20 credits or whatever, but they don't have specific certifications they can prove to prospective employers that they are employable and that they've been trained to do practical stuff. But we're also trying to get you guys to learn a lot more about volunteer and research projects and how to conduct yourselves, how to work with people. In the meanwhile, inevitably, you work on your verbal and written communication skills. We, in fact, have a large written component where we're trying to get your writing skills up to graduate level so you can impress a prospective employer. And when you join ecosystem restoration, you're joining a cohort. The people you go to school with, you're going to see them around for the next 20 years. So you're making a bit of a community getting started. And in bold, I've said employment. As I said before, both programs, we try and help you find that first job in the industry. So you might have figured out by now that I'm the coordinator of this. We've got both full-time and part-time staff. We've got people working in the labs, keeping the labs going, setting up field equipment. So we're ready for you. We've got all the people and equipment and people needed for this. Topics I'd like to cover today. we have these specific training sessions. For instance, in the first fall reading week, you do drone piloting. So you can actually become there's a special term for that, isn't there, Taylor? What's that term for being a drone pilot? Do you remember? Did you take that, Taylor? No, okay, sorry. All right, we also work in special training such as ecological land classification, the OBBN, that's the benthics bionetworking business, chainsaw training, wilderness first aid, pesticide applications license, and electrofishing's coming up in early April. So on top of the basic curriculum, we've organized a lot of these extracurricular certifications. There's also a lot of volunteer and research opportunities through the Niagara College's SCR student chapter. That's the Society of Ecological Restoration. This year, for instance, we're building a barn swallow nesting habitat on campus based on a successful proposal ready by students last year. So that's a newer phenomenon where I'm getting students to write proposals. And for those successful proposals, we're actually implementing these through the design of them and the construction and a lot of volunteer work. So that's quite a bit of fun, and that's been working out well. We also have if you're into animals and monitoring, we also run a course called Wild Species Management, where we're getting students out there doing acoustic monitoring of bats or owls, looking at garter snake hibernacular, monitoring redback salamanders and spotted and blue spotted salamanders. So a lot of hands-on animal monitoring going on in the program as well. Okay, yes, and meanwhile, I told you about the Society of Ecological Restoration. This year, there's a woolly adelgid monitoring going on. That's down in Wainfleet, that's a nasty aphid-like creature that's attacking hemlocks in Ontario. As I said, we've been building barn swallow nesting habitat. We're working on stream rehabilitation, vernal pool design, and the students also, this is something they're very proud of, and they should be, they created a job fair in February this year, over 2 days, and had, 42 different prospective employers show up for that. So that was student design, student organized, student led, and that really worked out the job fair. And I'm very proud they did that. Well, I think the idea of today's procedures, will answer questions later on. And so I'll let Katie talk about environmental management assessment now, her program. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Martin. As Martin said, we wanted to present to you together today. One of the things that we've done in the past is you've had to kind of choose before you even went to the information session. And we always experienced the fact that occasionally we would get an EMA student who ended up in ecosystem restoration or vice versa. So we really want to help you to be able to make the choice that's best for you. As Martin said, our student success is very, very critical to us. And they have a lot of similarities and they attract a lot of the same people, but they have different outcomes. So we want to make sure that that's quite clear to you before you leave the session today. So the EMA program has applied learning, as does ER, to build on your undergraduate knowledge. And it has a bit of a different focus in that it's a tour of many of the major elements of the environmental sector, because we want you to be able to identify and to narrow down your interests. One of the things that we see perpetually is that students were looking for jobs after undergraduate and they didn't see themselves in any of the descriptions. They always saw the jobs that they would like to have, but they said, I don't know how to do half of these things. And I guarantee you, once you finish one of our graduate programs, that won't be the case. It'll be more difficult for you to actually narrow down which of those kinds of jobs you'd like to pursue. So because of the heavy course load, you have a really significant opportunity to go through and say, you know what, I love that. I don't like that. That's a definite maybe, would never want to do that. And that's great, because that's a big part of what we want to do. We want to be able to guide you. And regardless of whether you love all of the elements or not, you have them then in your toolbox when you graduate. So you're able to be flexible and you're able to have a broader spectrum of jobs to which you could apply. One of the things that is very evident in both of these sectors is that these industries are changing very rapidly. And because of the fieldwork season, we want you to be adaptable. So we want you to be in a role that you can switch if the government switches. You can modify your course and you can still be really, really relevant to the job sector. So that's a really important thing for us, that you get a sense of what you like to do. We also give you a client-based project in almost every course that we do, for two reasons. First of all, when we have a big pool of graduate students, the quality of the work that you create shouldn't be fake. we have too many people needing this kind of project and work done. So both from the client's perspective and from your perspective, we think students are much more engaged when the projects are real. But also then when you go to an interview, you don't have to tell people what you know. You can say, look, here's what I did. And you can give them your phase 1 environmental site assessment or your environmental assessment terms of reference or your completed waste audit or your energy audit, et cetera. So at the end, not only do you have the skills, but you also have the proof in terms of your experience. So I wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that you'll explore there. So you can see that the course load is quite heavy, and we make no bones about that at the beginning. And the reason for that is we have a short period of time to kind of take you on the tour that I just described. So we have a number of full-time faculty in the program that came from many years of industry experience. That's one of the things that you'll notice is that you don't have people in the program who graduated from school, kept studying, got a PhD, and then have worked in research. You have people that are actively involved in industry, either before they got there and in most cases continuing on. Patrick Robson, another one of our key faculty, is still heavily engaged in the region, as am I. We sit on boards of directors. We occasionally consult. We are actively engaged in board work that makes these experiences that we have on a week-to-week basis applicable to the classroom. We're telling you what we did last week, not what we learned in school, just the same as you did. We also have a number of really specialized courses here. And so as a result, we have part-time faculty. A good example of this is our risk assessment that we have in the second semester. Risk assessment is taught by a consultant at Stantec who risk assesses full-time. He's one of the most well-renowned risk assessment professionals in Canada. And so he has an absolute wealth of knowledge. And so you're not going to find someone who has, 42 different specialties and has a very razor thin knowledge about the things that we're teaching you. They're true experts who are actively engaged in still doing this. So in the first semester, you can see that the courses are a little bit more focused on the assessment piece. So very much about getting good data. So in an environmental analysis, you're out in the field and in the lab, learning how to collect soil and groundwater samples as well as sediment. You're learning how to analyze them. You're learning how to get the information you need to make good management decisions. This works obviously close together with laws and regulations because we want to understand what's applicable in any given scenario. And we want you to be able to give advice to either your employer or to many people from a consulting perspective. We have site assessment as an example, and every year we conduct a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is one of the showpieces of your portfolio. And we do that individually because that's the way you would do it as a professional. And in the second half, we work on a phase 2 simulation that you do as a group, because again, that's the way that it would play out for you in industry. Continuing on, occupational health and safety is obviously a very critical part of this industry. You do waste audits. We have a focused environmental communications course because, much as Martin said, we want you to be able to communicate at a graduate level. It's just as important in many cases the way you say things as what you're saying, and we want to make sure that you're very persuasive and able to get what you want in this industry. We also have industrial processes because so much of the work that you do from a management perspective requires you to understand how pollution is created, what are the challenges that these industries face. So we want to give you a broad understanding of what you're going to be dealing with. We kind of switch hats in the second half, and it focuses a little bit more on the management side. So now that we have good information, what do we do about it? So we have risk assessment, we have auditing, where we continue on the information gathering, but with a bit more of a management focus. One of the big courses is organizational sustainability, where we prepare you to become an environmental manager within an organization. So we're dealing with things like environmental management systems, or with corporate social responsibility. One of our big clients this semester for organizational sustainability is 48 North. So they're a major consumer packaged goods in the emerging cannabis industry. And so we're working closely with that organization to help them up their game from an environmental management perspective. So again, another good showpiece that you'd have in a burgeoning industry to be able to discuss in an interview. We also have project management. That's a course that works very closely with our internship program because that's one of the key experiential learning pieces for you. As Martin mentioned, the way our internship works is it's 1 day a week in the second semester. So the way that our system works is that you begin the application and interview process essentially in week 2 of the program. It works very closely with our communications course because we work heavily on resume development and interview skills. It's obviously a very important communication perspective, and we want to make sure that you understand not that you don't just get a bunch of extra skills, but you understand how to market yourself in the context of that. So we go through a lot of work on our resumes. We do peer work so you understand what the competition looks like. And we make sure that once you are successful in landing the interview, that you also have the communication strategy and skills to be able to convert on those interviews, because it's a tricky time to be job searching. And so we want to make sure that you're both as well positioned from a skill perspective as possible, but also as skilled at converting those opportunities. So I've listed some sample opportunities below here. We typically try to have one from kind of every sector that you would think about wanting to work. So these are some of the ones that we have right now. A lot of people I know are worried about how this has been influenced as part of COVID, and this has been one of the things that's been quite untouched in the program. While some of the placements that would have been live are now virtual, what that's let us do is it's let us work with clients that wouldn't have been as accessible to us because of location. When it's 1 day a week, you're not moving there, but because every organization is so much more adept at being able to work remotely, it's upped our game with respect to who we can offer. So this year's collection includes consulting, which is a big one. It's a big end game of the program. We graduate a lot of consultants. Couple of reasons for that. They tend to hire en masse every year, right as the students are about to graduate. So that's a good fit. Site assessment tends to be a big end game out of this because they do hire so many junior employees. The pay is quite good. You get to adventure because you're traveling to new sites. And they look for juniors. So that's a big area. There's also management consulting. Things like Palmer, Colville, and Carbon Zero do a variety of different projects on carbon management, on organizational sustainability, as does Hatch this year. We also have some direct industrial placements, and that's an important one because I think a lot of people do have the end game of potentially becoming an environmental manager. So a few to consider are Derez, Walkers, and 48 North, as I mentioned, is one of our new ones, as well as Rankin Construction. We also have government at every level with the new climate change assistant positions that are being government funded. We're starting to see a lot of positions at municipal government, but we've had them and do have them kind of running the gamut here in all kinds of different sectors, from environmental assessment to energy auditing to site assessment to watershed planning to transportation planning as well. We also have a good selection of not-for-profit because that's another end game. People want to work more in the education side or in improving life from a not-for-profit organization. So we have the Hamilton-based Green Venture. We have an agricultural placement that takes on a good number of students every year, as well as eco schools in Heartland. So I would say that the internship postings definitely mirror the career opportunities following the program. And we see students kind of tackling this full range of internship opportunities once they graduate. Internships are a really good leg up because a lot of the students do get hired by their internship hosts. Basically, your goal is in 14 weeks to make them not be able to imagine life without you, and that works out very well for the most part. The other thing it does is it allows you to kind of double down on an experience that you've had, or perhaps try something out that you're not too sure of so that you can either rule it in or rule it out as you job search. But in the end, the most recent work experience that shows up on your resume is directly related to the industry that you're looking to apply. And we're fortunate to have an internship coordinator that works with us every year. She facilitates the internship process. She seeks out and she helps me with project management, where we work very closely with the internships to get you to journal, to provide you with the skills that you need to be an effective project manager, and to dazzle the client during your internship to give yourself the best employment opportunities. So that's my information there on the screen, as well as Sandy's, the internship coordinator, and we're both very happy to answer any questions that you might have about the program or the internship opportunities.
Now we've really concluded the formal presentation portion. I do encourage you to type any questions that you have at all in the Q&A, because now we're going to open up the session to any question and answer.
While we wait for questions, Mavis, why don't we open the floor to the two students and let them say a little bit about their respective programs?
Absolutely. All right, so Taylor, I don't know if maybe you want to go first.
Yep, sure, I can do that. I can start with why I chose Niagara College. I have a few friends in the field. My background is I have a degree in wildlife biology and conservation from the University of Guelph. And like Katie said before, you know, coming from university, I wasn't seeing myself in the job ads trying to get a job after I graduated. I saw the jobs I wanted. I just wasn't seeing the skills and the soft and hard skills that was needed for these jobs. I have a few friends in the industry, and all of them came from this program, ecosystem restoration program. And they all got jobs right after. They all came out feeling more confident in their knowledge in the industry and just a general overview. My background is really on wildlife biology, so I didn't expect to really fall in love with everything else. So I'm going for a job interview now for an ELC, which is all ecological lands classification stuff. So that's something I never really even knew existed. So it's really cool that Niagara College was able to like provide all of that for me. Niagara College really supports their students even through like everything was changing this year with COVID. And that's just the nature of it. There hasn't really been like, this is how it's going, but the college has really been diligent on making sure the students are safe and aware what's going on and providing all of the necessary accommodations, even doing it from home and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it kind of sucks we can't be on campus because it's such a nice campus. And I would have loved to try all the food from the cooking programs. But hopefully after COVID, we could all come back and try that. But yeah, I've had a really fun time. And even through COVID, we've managed to get outside quite a lot. So if anyone's really concerned about doing this type of program through COVID times, yes, it's not as outside heavy as we wanted it to be, but we really made the best of it. And I actually think it was almost pushed the program to be better, because instead of doing some classes outside and some classes online, sometimes for first semester, we were able to just do classes all outside. So we were sitting in the middle of a forest, sitting on logs, on the ground, having a lecture. And it was really awesome because you got to be in the environment, learning about the environment, not just learning about it in a classroom and then going outside to see it. So that was really cool. And I actually think COVID maybe even pushed that further and made the program better in that way. And we really got to, you know, fight for those other opportunities to go outside because we didn't really want to be inside. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And Ty, if you don't mind sharing your experience.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. So why I chose Niagara College. So a bit of background information. I did my undergrad in environmental science at McMaster, and I finished in 2014. And then I actually moved abroad. So I was gone for 5 years because I couldn't see myself working again once I finished, university. And I didn't really want to, for some reason I had in my head that I have to do like a master's after so that I could even be on a competing level. And I wasn't ready for that. I was exhausted. So I happened to go back home because I was born in Angola, and I was blessed enough. I found a job. I worked for 5 years, but it wasn't in my field. It wasn't in environmental science. I was actually working in HR. For a company that worked in the oil and gas industry nonetheless. So after I finished, I came back and I came back in 2019, and then I was looking at how I was going to transition. So I was kind of thinking if I was going to go HR route or go back to environmental science. And I spoke to a couple of colleagues of mine that we went to McMaster together. And one of them actually suggested Niagara College. And she said, they have great programs, and, they have a great reputation, and they're recognized as having very good environmental based programs. And so that's kind of how I started looking into Niagara College. And then I found the EMA program, which was great because it was short, which doesn't mean easy. It's actually super duper intense, guys, but it's worthwhile for sure. Like Katie said. So I really do feel like this program, is great because you do get to experience a lot of what's available. So one of the things that I felt was lacking, I didn't really know what kind of jobs were available in environmental science. I just thought I could be an environmental manager or coordinator, but I didn't really know anything else. So, you know, having experienced all of these courses, I've been able to see there's variety, and there's different things that, like Katie said, that I like, and then other things I really don't like. And I'm happy I was able to find that out now, rather than, you know, possibly landing a job and then having to backtrack. So with regards to how the college supports its students, besides the services that it does have, and, you know, we have labs still, which are done in person. I feel extremely safe because, again, the college is taking extraordinary precautions to make sure that everyone is doing their absolute best and staying as safe as possible, which in some parts does take away from the experience a little bit, for sure. But like in terms of being able to socialize and actually having conversations with your colleagues. But on the other end, we all want to be safe and still learning. So that's been good. The greatest thing I have to say with regards to support is the faculty. You know, being someone, I was out of school for so long and I was already working in the corporate world. So there's been a lot of, you know, different things that I've been having to get used to again, because I haven't been in the school environment. So the faculty at Niagara College for the EMA program is absolutely amazing. They support you, not just in terms of trying to make sure that, you know, you understand what's going on and that you're getting actual experience to make you competitive when you're looking for work. They help you with your resumes. They help you with any interview issues. They help you to look for jobs. They're just as, you know, dedicated and invested in you developing not only your skills, but also in being able to place you in the work, you know, in the work field, which is very different. I think a lot of us would be able to say from a university experience, you know. So this is very hands-on in terms of everything. And that has been the greatest and biggest difference, for sure. So yes, it is weird with COVID, but you know, like Taylor said, we've been able to still go outside. And I've actually been able to make some very great connections in terms of even friendships with people that I haven't even really spent time with outside of the school environment. So, you know, in that aspect, it is still a little bit nerve-wracking, but the college is doing its best. And hopefully, as things get better, you know, maybe for the next starts, there'll be a little bit more interaction on campus. But again, not trying to put anybody's health at risk. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. So I'm going to welcome Martin and Katie back on camera so we can go through some of our open question and answers that we have here. So I'll start off with our first question. I have completed my graduation in chemical engineering. Can I get admission in a course in the environmental management and assessment course?
Sure thing. So the way that admission works for both of the programs is that we have a pre-approved collection of degrees. And so if you meet one of those, along with all of the other admission requirements that are kind of consistent across the college, then you're granted direct admission into the programs. If you don't have one of those, there is a second route, and it's through the portfolio process where you submit a cover letter and a resume that basically describes your suitability for the program. And the reason that we do that in both cases is that we want to make sure that if you don't have kind of the employer's preferred background or the background that's going to set you up to be as successful as your colleagues in the classroom, then you bring something else to the table that will kind of even the playing field for you. Because as we've mentioned repeatedly, we don't want to bring you here if we don't think that you're going to be successful at the other end of it. And so we're looking for strong communication skills, and ideally you've got some experience that you didn't gain from the classroom. So even if you didn't kind of find your path in the first way, that you have shown some commitment to the environmental sector and that we know this is where you want to be. So in the case of chemical engineering, you would not be a direct admit to the environmental management and assessment program, but you'd have a very good shot coming through the portfolio process, because engineering is a good route. And in many chemical engineering degrees, we know there's a good environmental component there. So we would assess your cover letter and your resume in that context, and based on what else you've done and how your communication skills are, we would hopefully be able to give you admission to the program. Martin, do you want to say anything else about how admission plays out?
Yeah.
That's good. Yes, Katie, fighting with my buttons. I forgot what you said, but I think you've got that precisely correct. We do want you to make the right decision to come to our programs. And that's, so if your resume is not dead on, as Katie said, we give an opportunity to write your portfolio and we take it from there. And we are looking for, in the case of ecosystem restoration, even if you have not precisely got the background that we're looking for the first cut, we look at if you volunteered, not necessarily specifically environment, but volunteered in general, because ecosystem restoration is it's a lot of community business going on in ecosystem restoration. We work together, you volunteer, you work on groups together, and then you hope out of all that, right, Taylor, you get a job, right? So there's a lot of volunteering, and we like to see that your personnel will shine through in your resumes, that you actually have got that social side of you as well. So I think that's all I would add to that.
Perfect.
That's one thing that I forgot to mention, that when you sign up for these programs in particular, you're also signing up with so many other like-minded individuals that not only do you find coworkers that you're going to see for the rest of your life, but you do find your friends.
Yeah, I think
a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The environmental sector is a very small sector, and we'll probably say that to you 100 times while you're here at the college. But in each of the programs, you graduate with a network, and these are the people you're going to run into over and over again. I would say from EMA, the first way that you get a job is getting it in some way through your internship employer. But the second best opportunity is you get it through one of your colleagues, because they're in a job that either they don't want and they think would be a good fit for you, or they're hiring more people. So the network is huge from a social perspective, but also from a continued employment perspective. Leaving with a network of people just like you, as Taylor mentioned, I think is one of the huge benefits of both of these programs.
Perfect. So we have another question here. I'm going to enroll for the EMA program. I'm 36. I have a master's degree in biology. Do I need any extra testing for enrolling in this program?
So depending on if English is your first language, you would need to demonstrate language proficiency, but biology is a direct admit into the program. So from the portfolio perspective, that wouldn't be necessary. And I can certainly tell you that there are a lot of older students in the program. So there's a really good mix from those coming right from their undergraduates to those seeking out a second career. You definitely wouldn't, by any stretch of the imagination, be the oldest student we have in any of the intakes. So environment tends to be a really common second career choice, because if you've kind of gone one direction in your career and you got there and you want to come back and do something a little bit more meaningful, it's not at all unusual to select the environmental field in a second career opportunity.
Perfect. And we have one more here. When is the deadline for applying for the EMA program? I believe we still have openings.
We do still have openings, but it's important to get in. Typically, depending on the year, we will eventually waitlist the program. This year was an exception in the fall because there was so much uncertainty around it. So there's no specific deadline, but we've sent out a big batch of offers now, and we moved into rolling admissions. So it's important to get in as soon as you can to make sure that you're high up in that list for being offered admission. So again, no deadline, but sooner is definitely better and ups your chances of receiving an offer of admission.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions from the participants today? Feel free to write them there in the Q&A. We are getting towards the end of our formal session today.
Mavis, I'd like to make one comment.
Absolutely.
This person here, Sean Parkinson, he's brought up an interesting point for me. Both the EMA program, the ER program, we've been around for about 20 years now. And when we first started out, we had no presence in industry. But it's really changed so that, and it extends on the idea of having friends, but also having a reputation. And many of our people enrolling our programs have not found out about our program through the internet or sessions like this. It's just word of mouth. And we've got a lot of credibility, both programs, word of mouth. The people who graduated 20 years ago, they're in middle or even up in management now, and they know what we have to offer. And I think that's really a strong asset that's growing every year. When you're a start-out program, who knows what's going to get you? But after 20 years, I think we've really proven ourselves to be really useful, a way of getting the job, right?
Yeah, I think Martin makes a very good point. We operated for a long time without a ton of competition in this field. So we were two of the only programs at the postgraduate level, but there's been a huge rash of them sort of coming out over the last couple of years. But because of the 20 years of history, Martin's absolutely right. The grads come back too, because they come back to hire because they know exactly what our grads know from both programs. And because they're taught the same way, they know how to integrate them into the work environment. So I think from a hiring perspective, by far and away, it leads you to choosing a program that has that history, because there's a built-in network already waiting for you. And the grads come back. We have a Facebook site and a LinkedIn site where they post all of their job offers. So it's a really supportive network to graduate into. And to Sean's point in the chat, I think we see a lot of that. We see a lot of people who took a job out of necessity and then went a little further down the non-environmental road than they would have liked to. And this is kind of your chance to get back. And the good news is a lot of the internship employers, they recognize that scenario and they really value the experience that you got wherever it came from. And so it often gives you a leg up in kind of what you're searching for. So lets you figure out what you would like to do. And we do get a lot of students from the same programs year after year because we end up in the same scenario. So happy to chat further, Sean, if that helps give you some confidence that one of our programs might be the right choice for you.
Perfect, thank you. There's one more question there. Is there any information on what the fall schedule might look like? So I know we are still waiting, of course, on what public health will approve and how things play out that way. But our focus already is getting students back on campus safely to complete all those hands-on components. Any of our courses that have a mandatory hands-on component, where that is one of the main learning outcomes, you will still be conducting that in a safe environment. But really looking forward to it and already making advancements to hopefully have more students back on campus for fall.
Just reinforce something there, Mavis. This year, when in both at EMA and ER, when we had courses that were lab-based, we brought the students on campus in the labs and worked on that. When we had courses that were very much field-based, the students came out on field trips and we did it outside. When we had courses which were, and elements within a course where we would have a lecture room, we would do that online. So that was an easy transition. Instead of meeting in a lecture room, they meet online. But we've tried to conserve in both programs all those elements that really had to be face-to-face, hands-on. That was done through COVID. So we're answering this question here. We can do at least that this fall. We will, barring a fifth wave, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. For information, so we actually have a summer offering right now. It's the second term for our January starts, and we are moving more than we had on the January term on campus. So now we have a bit of class-based work, and basically what it's going to be doing is we're going to be able to have activities every week, and it'll be different courses using that time space, but it's an improved access to campus for certain for us. And I think Taylor mentioned that in some ways, it never would have happened by choice this way, but it has improved both of the programs. We definitely missed the on-campus piece, but it's opened up guest speakers, it's opened up faculty that we wouldn't have access to necessarily in the Niagara region to be able to move in. And the investment in systems that the college has made it a lot easier for us to bring in people that we wouldn't have access to if they had to show up on campus. So there are some things that have worked really well online, and students have appreciated not having to drive to campus for more traditional. Yeah. It's improved our greenhouse gas footprint from a commuter perspective. And for graduate students, the other thing we find is that unlike the undergrads, where a lot of them live really close, a lot of the students in graduate work have kind of established themselves somewhere. So they're trekking a heck of a commute to be able to get here. It's also made us be able to condense our schedules. So where we may have had early classes and late classes, et cetera, the schedules, because we can use online time slots, have been a lot more compressed. So I wouldn't want to predict what the fall is going to look like, but as Martin said, it will likely be more than we're doing now and even more than in the summer, but still with some online stuff, which I think is in many ways an improvement actually.
Yeah, I'm a part of the SER, which is a committee that does planning in the restoration ecosystem restoration program, and we did an online job fair this year because we couldn't have it in person. And we were actually able to get people all the way from Calgary to join in on these sessions because we were able to do it online.
That's a really great point. It's great to look at it from that perspective as well, because as much as it has, held up a lot of things, it's also benefited us in a lot of, scheduling options or delivery options as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I do, want to say last call for any questions that we have for today's session. I will be hanging around for the remainder of the session, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who presented today, and all of our students especially. I know you can hear it from the program coordinators and myself, who's a recruiter for the college, but hearing it from the students and learning about what's going on day in, day out, that's really something I think that's important to take away from today's session. So thank you all for joining us today. As mentioned, if you do have any questions, hang around in the chat. This does conclude the formal portion of the presentation. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day today.
Great. Thank you, Mavis. And thanks to everyone.
Thank you, Mavis.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor.